I don't understand what Assassin's Creed is anymore, and I sincerely doubt Ubisoft does either. We went from this to whatever this is supposed to be. Ever since the RPG trilogy began, this franchise has been going in a rather odd direction. It's less about being an assassin and more about messing around with cool time periods and incorporating fantasy elements. To many, that is fine. These newer Assassin's Creed games have broken sales records, so obviously this Witcher 3 inspired formula is working, but it has come at a cost. The narrative and core gameplay has been severely butchered. Parkour was what this franchise was known for, and it doesn't really factor into Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. Obviously it still is there, but to say it's lackluster to the prior entries in the franchise would be an understatement. Ubisoft has promised change. The company has revealed that while AC Valhalla-like games are very much in development, there's still room for the more traditional experiences. The original formula that so many of us fell in love with years ago will return with the upcoming AC Mirage, but even then, times have changed with this franchise, and importantly, the people involved in making it. Ubisoft is currently in disarray, with quality and innovation stagnating. Recapturing the spirit of beloved games like AC2 or Brotherhood or Black Flag is easier said than done. Assassin's Creed was truly fresh with possibilities a decade ago. Now there are just questions and concerns. Something not exclusive to AC, but also the entirety of Ubisoft's catalog. But as is the case with this once beloved game franchise, the internet has also changed. It too was truly fresh with possibilities a decade ago, but now there are many concerns surfing around online with the rise of scammers and hackers, as well as restrictive ISPs and streaming apps. As someone who has had bad actors steal my personal info and the dreaded companies collecting my data, there is a need to be protected. So just like the assassins that struck from the shadows, Surfshark VPN brings the fight, providing users with their award-winning virtual private network which keeps you safe and anonymous online. Whatever you're searching, your passwords, purchases, all of that data is encrypted and kept private as it should be, with Surfshark VPN having a strict no-logs policy. You can even easily change your location to another country, coming in handy when wanting to access restricted websites or shows on Netflix that may be blocked based on your region. I may or may not have watched Better Call Saul's final season when it originally aired by connecting to France. You get the most bang for your buck by doing this, and access to the entire content library of a streaming service. So begin your journey today of taking online security serious while opening up the online landscape for yourself. Do this with zero risk, a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply use code KILLA for 83% off with 3 months free. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to begin today. Again, a big thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring the video. Now, a number of months ago, someone shared a clip of the smooth and enjoyable movement and AC Unity. It reminded me of what this franchise once was, and also the fact that Ubisoft essentially threw all of this away. Obviously, it is not just parkour that has been lost. The silent assassin that strikes from above is no more, or at least it's less certain with the RPG elements at play. These newer games encourage more action and less stealth. The common criticism is that this franchise is less Assassin's Creed and more Warriors Creed now, and it's really difficult to argue against that. It's obvious that Assassin's Creed is Ubisoft's biggest and most successful franchise, and to keep that money train chugging along, they realized after Syndicate's poor sales performance years ago, something had to change. Unfortunately, that change was just looking to what CD Projekt Red produced in 2015 and doing their best to copy that formula. Origins was a fun time. It had some issues, but it felt fresh. Odyssey is loved by many, and there is some brilliance there, but it turns into a boring, grindy slogfest. Valhalla is again another boring, grindy slogfest, which takes the fantasy side of this franchise up to 100. Obviously, these games were never fully grounded in reality. I realize that, you realize that, but it seriously seems the writing room at Ubisoft has turned into, why the fuck not, let's just do it. Each of these newer time periods that Ubisoft has tackled have ancient mythology, whether that be ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, or the age of the Vikings. All of them have weird and wacky things that can be used to better flesh out the narrative experience. It's just that none of this really enhances the story of the Templars versus Assassins, which at one point was what this franchise was solely about, the shadow war that spanned throughout history, with the artifacts such as the Apples of Eden left behind by the mysterious ancient civilization of the Isu constantly being fought over and playing a major role in the events of mankind. Now though, I honestly don't care to keep track of what's happening with the franchise's overarching storyline. The incorporation of more and more fantasy elements along with continually adding to established lore has created a mess, one that needed to happen in the eyes of Ubisoft to keep the franchise fresh and unique. Obviously, this departure from what these games were supposed to be about isn't something that happened with this recent RPG trilogy. This happened long before. It's the problem with having a new game every other year for a story-focused franchise. It's not sustainable, at least creatively. There has to be a conclusion, but the problem is that Ubisoft needs Assassin's Creed for financial success. The company doesn't have the freedom to let the franchise rest for some time, like Bethesda can do with the Elder Scrolls or Rockstar with Grand Theft Auto. They are required to keep this machine going, which means that the lore has to keep being expanded upon, but with where we are now, it's just a convoluted mess. If I was to approach someone in 2012 explaining what Assassin's Creed is, I could probably do it in a sentence or two. Nowadays, we're gonna have to sit down for an hour or two. In mid-2010, Patrice Désilets, I probably said that wrong, the creator of this franchise departed from Ubisoft. The last Assassin's Creed game he creatively impacted was Brotherhood, arguably the best game in the franchise, in my opinion. Désilets left as he wanted more creative independence, and originally he envisioned the series wrapping up with Assassin's Creed 3, a game that was originally intended for Desmond, the modern-day protagonist, to serve as the main protagonist, using his knowledge and skills he learned from his ancestors Altair and Ezio to finally take down Abstergo. The end of the world would still happen in 2012, but a new civilization would be started somewhere else by Desmond and Lucy as Adam and Eve. That conclusion never happened. Instead, Ubisoft went in a completely different direction, dragging along the modern day stuff like a used condom, but for some reason choosing to give Desmond the axe, although not necessarily based on how Valhalla wrapped up. Regardless, Désilets' departure, along with many of the other leading creative figures on the franchise, such as writer Corey May and producer Jade Raymond, has long been viewed for why the franchise has fallen. The lack of the original creative vision led to Assassin's Creed going in completely random directions. Sometimes it worked well, sometimes it didn't. And now it's not really Assassin's Creed anymore, it's whatever Ubisoft needs it to be. This isn't an issue that is exclusive to this franchise. Ubisoft has infamously done this to Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Essentially anything that is a first-person shooter, it's a Tom Clancy game. It's all about brand recognition, even if it doesn't creatively make any sense at all. Over the course of the last year or so, Ubisoft has continued to double down on the fantasy side of AC Valhalla, an aspect of the main narrative that in my opinion didn't work all that well. Don't get me wrong, how Ubisoft incorporates the Isu history into the myths and legends that are presented in the settings of Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla is at times clever, but when you have a mediocre 50-hour main story that easily could be cut down to about 20 hours, these side adventures in the mythical realms don't feel magical, they feel tedious. Especially with lackluster writing, it's a recipe for disaster. Each of these newer Assassin's Creed RPGs have brought players into the Egyptian underworld, the Greeks' fields of Elysium, and the 9 realms of the Norse. Each of these games further expanded on the mythology presented in the base game with dedicated DLCs, which took players back to these fantasy lands, and all I'm gonna say about that is that in 2022, I assumed that the only Ragnarok story that we'd be experiencing was the one made for God of War, not Assassin's Creed. Especially with Valhalla's biggest expansion, some players have made fun of the evolution of this franchise because yes, going from hiding in crowds of people to carefully and silently assassinate a banker to going 1v1 against the giant Suter it's just bizarre. I've said it over and over again in this video, I get that Assassin's Creed has never been fully grounded in reality, but the parameters that were set about a decade ago were pretty clear, and now it continues to be broken down for the sake of Ubisoft needing or wanting to create spectacle. The problem is the creative team isn't able to establish intrigue in writing and characters, so what the players get is a bunch of flashy nonsense. The settings of the older Assassin's Creed games were arguably the star of the show, along with historical figures from that time. You still get some of that nowadays, but the level of detail and care isn't reserved to a single city, as most players will swoop in, do a mission or two, and then move on to the next. This is an issue with Ubisoft design in which the open worlds feel lifeless and boring to explore. Sure, there is beauty with the architecture and environments, but that doesn't mean squat when the actual actual content in these regions feel lackluster. You have to wonder why Ubisoft so quickly wants to move players from these historical settings to mythical lands. With Far Cry, this was something that was a fun idea about a decade ago, but for some reason Ubisoft doesn't understand that this formula has dried up and it really is just turning the franchise into a joke. Furthermore, this issue is enhanced with the data mines of the last few months. Want to be a Viking with Iron Man or Star Wars or Horizon or Thanos-inspired gear that may be happening soon or not? It's unclear what the fate of this content will be, but Ubisoft has already had recent collaborations with Destiny and Monster Hunter World. Obviously, some have jumped in joy over this, while others just don't care, but this to me is kinda cringe, and it does make me feel like the old man down the street who is left complaining all the time about what happened to this once beloved franchise. Sure, it is just cosmetics, and since day one, their microtransaction stores had outlandish things such as a unicorn ship skin, but I just wonder when enough is enough. Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2 played around with myths and legends, but always stayed true to the time period, something I can respect, but for some reason Ubisoft doesn't seem to have this ability. My belief is that the company just really wants Assassin's Creed to be what it's not. They want it to be their Fortnite, a franchise that can be anything and everything. It's not a goal led by creative aspirations, but financial aspirations. This is why I am so annoyed at what Assassin's Creed has become and concerned for the future for this franchise. Later this year, it appears a smaller, more classic AC game will be released. Mirage was revealed about 5 months or so ago, alongside a cinematic trailer. Since then, there has been absolutely nothing, no gameplay yet, just reports of 2 internal delays, with the game being moved from early 2023 to now the second half of the year. Originally intended to be DLC for Valhalla, this now standalone game has us follow Valhalla character Basim in 9th century Baghdad with a focus on parkour. This is great news, although this isn't really where Ubisoft is focusing their time and resources. The future of this franchise is Assassin's Creed Infinity. Announced in September, Ubisoft describes Infinity as a hub that will link future Assassin's Creed games together. It will be a home for a variety of games of different genres and lengths. It will mix premium box games with paid for and free content. There will be a multiplayer mode that will unite the franchise's eras, and it will be the place where Assassin's Creed's modern day story will now live, so no more of that in any of these RPG games. This platform will begin with Assassin's Creed Codename Red, a feudal Japan shinobi themed RPG currently set to launch next year, but this project has run into reported problems, with employees departing from the game's development because they don't wish to work with one of the project's leads who has faced accusations of abuse. If you don't remember, Ubisoft very much tried to sweep that whole controversy under the rug. After AC Red, Project Hex will follow, being developed by the AC Valhalla team and directed by Clint Hawking, who recently directed Watch Dogs Legion. Project Hex is currently set internally to release in 2026. This game is said to be darker, featuring a focus on the witch hunt era in 16th or 17th century Europe. Other than Red and Hex, Ubisoft announced in late October Project Invictus, which will bring back multiplayer to Assassin's Creed with a standalone experience through Infinity that might be free to play and possibly crossing over characters from different periods. Details at the moment appear to be in flux, much like much of this upcoming Assassin's Creed hub. But other than those 3 Infinity-related projects that have been announced, a Netflix Assassin's Creed show is on the way and just lost its showrunner. Project Jade is a mobile Assassin's Creed game set during the Chinese Qin Dynasty, and Project Nexus is a VR Assassin's Creed game with past protagonists being brought back. So yeah, a lot of Assassin's Creed is on the horizon, but quite clearly, the Infinity Hub is the focus of the future. Even right now, it appears Ubisoft doesn't exactly know what this hub will entail, but to me it sounds a lot like a premium live service platform of sorts, which will evolve with time. The fear I have is that this will only continue to be a convoluted mess with boatloads of microtransactions. Again, Ubisoft's financial problems does not inspire confidence that they won't nickel and dime at every opportunity that they get. But in terms of the future settings, they sound encouraging, although I'm not sure modern day Ubisoft can or will do any of this justice. Feudal Japan a decade ago was laughed at by Ubisoft, and since then Ghost of Tsushima released to critical acclaim, with a sequel now on the way from developer Sucker Punch Productions. Team Ninja is also developing a Feudal Japan open world RPG called Rise of the Ronin, set to launch next year, so AC Red does feel too little too late. Project Hex, on the other hand, sounds like it may have a focus on survival horror instead of being an RPG. That's different and kind of exciting, but again, I just don't know if the development team is up for the task. Regardless, it definitely sounds like Ubisoft has bold plans moving forward, with Infinity maybe taking inspiration from the evolving games such as Warzone and Destiny 2. More so the latter, I suppose. Soon enough, this picture will become a lot more clear, but for now, many are fearful with the direction Ubisoft is taking this franchise. The simplification, dumbing down, and removal of core gameplay features, the increase in fantasy, the expanded focus on microtransactions, the quantity over quality mentality. Assassin's Creed was at one point taking this gaming industry by storm with revolutionary gameplay and interesting storytelling. That formula eventually dried up, which led to the RPG trilogy, and soon will lead to some sort of live service platform. So what happened to Assassin's Creed? It's a story of over-reliance on one single IP, with the creative figures brought in not being able to match the standard that was set by the prior teams. The franchise indeed needed a fresh start with Origins, something I feel was accomplished, but instead of rediscovering and utilizing the aspects that made this franchise what it was, Ubisoft went in a different direction, one that many enjoy, but at least to myself, a far cry from what was established a decade ago, with the stories of Altair and Ezio, games that defined my childhood. These newer games have all the hallmarks of Ubisoft's notorious reputation of mediocrity, sprinkling in the DNA of many other existing franchises, some of their own, and some of much better games. Assassin's Creed will never reach the heights it once achieved, and that's okay, it's alright. It's just unfortunate that this franchise will likely keep on chugging along, exploring new horizons, even if it doesn't make any sense, until eventually people will grow sick and tired of it. That will be when finally this franchise can rest, and eventually, of course, get rebooted. Anyway, what are your opinions on the current direction of Assassin's Creed and the future plans with the Infinity Hub? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games, and again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.